Welcome! Today we're juxtaposing Protestant Reformation art with Catholic Counter-Reformation art. Just a quick review, the Protestant Reform began when monk Martin Luther nailed his 95 Theses to the door of the All Saints Church in Wittenberg, Germany, which was just the bulletin board at the times. And he did this in dissent of the church who'd been selling indulgences to its members. Indulgences were essentially tickets to sin and still get into heaven. One of the most notable Reformation artists was Dutch artist Rembrandt. Reformation art depicted humble, small-scale scenes of religious figures and often ordinary people. It was plain and portrayed a more intimate relationship of salvation between the worshiper and God, not a worshiper and an ecclesiastical authority. However, the church would not take this lying down, so to speak, so in 1545, Pope Paul III initiated the Council of Trent. They established some guidelines for art which became the foundation for Catholic Counter-Reformation art, and they commissioned artists such as Peter Paul Rubens to paint much of their new works. This was a lot like a facelift for them. They wanted to make themselves attractive, and their guidelines included art which was direct and compelling, and which would encourage piety. Let's start by first taking a look at Rembrandt's paintings. Let's start with Belshazzar's Feast. This is an Old Testament story from the 5th book of Daniel. Now Belshazzar was a regent of Babylon, and he gave this feast for his nobles. At this banquet he blasphemously served wine in the sacred vessels which he can see, which one of his predecessors had looted from the temple in Jerusalem. Rembrandt shows this moment when the divine hand came and wrote a phrase on the wall that only Daniel can decipher. And you can see all their reactions to seeing this hand appear out of nowhere. Interesting to note is the Rembrandt lighting, in which he highlights Belshazzar, and everything else in the back is really dark, putting a lot of focus on Belshazzar himself. The hand wrote, Mene, Mene, Tekel, Upharsin, and it was interpreted as, God has numbered the days of your kingdom and brought it to an end. You have been weighed in the balances and found wanting. Your kingdom is given to the Medes and the Persians, and Belshazzar was slain that very night. This highlights the social tensions at the times where the Catholic Church was abusing their power, and the Protestants were really seeking to find ways through art to develop a more personal relationship with their God. Let's take a look at a woman taken in adultery, another gospel story, but this time from the book of John. Here, Rembrandt highlights the nature of God's forgiveness for those who sin, a much different story than what the church is trying to sell. The scribes and the Pharisees were trying to trick Jesus into condoning disobedience to the law. They reminded him that the law of Moses commanded them to stone her, and he reminded them that everyone was sinners and did not fall for their trick. In Rembrandt's interpretation, Christ's stature is exaggerated to make him seem taller, and by analogy, morally superior than those trying to trick him. The use of muted colors and the extreme highlightation of the woman in the middle really bring the eyes to what's happening in the center of the picture. Rembrandt reminds us salvation comes through God, not ecclesiastical authorities. Next, let's look at Pilgrims at Emmaus. In this painting, Rembrandt depicts Christ sitting at a table, eating with his followers. Something Rembrandt's known for is painting bare feet, also dirty feet, which is something you're less likely to see from a painter of the church such as Ruben. In this painting, the light seems to irradiate off of Christ's robes and highlight the emotions of the faithful, recognizing the risen Savior. He also makes allusions to Christianity's beginnings, so the architecture is reminiscent of Paleo-Christian basilicas and also other painters. It seems Rembrandt seems to want the viewer to recall Christianity's beginnings as far as worshiping God. Now we'll compare with Ruben's art for the Counter-Reformation. Now we'll compare with Ruben's painting of Samson and Delilah. This is an Old Testament story in Judges 16. Samson fell in love with Delilah. She betrayed him. The Philistines bribed her to find out that all of his power came from his uncut hair. So here Rubens depicts the strong man lying in her lap asleep, while the powerful Philistines sent in one of their men to cut the hair from his head. Rubens depicts Venus with her son Cupid in the background, an allusion to his fate. Note that his use of colors is very bright, very vibrant in comparison to Rembrandt's muted colors. Very interesting where he put the power in this painting, because it certainly wasn't in the man of God, Samson. Now we'll look at Cristo Morto. It's a depiction of dead Christ with prominent religious figures mourning his death. We see Joseph of Arimathea, the Madonna, St. John the Evangelist, and Mary Magdalene. Everyone appears very strong and prominent looking, all echoing the strength of the church. Finally, we'll compare with Ruben's painting, The Brazen Serpent. This is an Old Testament story found in Numbers 21. Here, Rubens depicts Moses at the left with the hooded Eliezer beside him. He's calling to the people of Israel who are being attacked by a plague of serpents that God sent them because of their sinfulness. He told them if they would just look at the bronze serpent, anyone who was bitten, they would be saved. You can see Rubens depicts people doing their best to view the serpent so they can be saved. Unfortunately, there's a few people, the guy in the back, a couple on the bottom, who are either in positions where they cannot see well or have already been taken over by the plague. This painting is very vivid. His chiaroscuro really draws the viewer into each detail of the scene. This is a painting that was done in Rubens' studio, possibly, meaning that apprentices worked on this, and Rubens finished it up himself. The message of the painting does recall my memory back to the church who's undergoing a facelift, really wanting the people to look back to them to find their saving.